Recently in California, some historical clay brick buildings were damaged by a moderate earthquake. This is despite the fact that the buildings had been upgraded to resist stronger earthquakes. In general, the buildings did not collapse. However, the damage was just severe enough that falling bricks can pose a pretty significant hazard to people who are in the building or even around the building. In addition, there's also a risk that people could be displaced from their homes because the building is too severely damaged to provide adequate shelter. Given that these historical clay brick buildings are common in most of our cities across the country, this is an issue which needs to be investigated and subsequently addressed. Masonry can come in many different forms. For historical buildings, it's most commonly something called unreinforced clay brick masonry buildings. Now, these buildings tend to look very nice. These are the ones that really catch your eye going down Main Street. They also tend to last for a very, very long time. However, they can be problematic in earthquake regions. This is because they're both very heavy and very brittle, which is the worst possible combination for surviving an earthquake. As a result, we're not generally allowed to build new unreinforced masonry buildings. However, we're still left with some pretty important issues. The first one, what do we do about the buildings that have already been built? Do we continue strengthening and upgrading them in the same way that we've been doing for the last 50 years? Or, based upon the damage that was recently observed in California, do we need to change and improve our approach to strengthening these buildings? In my research group, we took a look at some of the damage which was observed in California and identified what we thought to be some of the key weaknesses in the strengthening strategies that are used by practicing engineers today. In my research, I've taken this a step further, and I actually designed and built an unreinforced masonry building on the shaking table in the Earthquake Research Lab here on campus. I designed the building to be as similar as possible to a lot of the buildings that you could find across the country. Then, I designed some simple strengthening measures, which were minimally invasive, based upon approaches that a lot of engineers would actually use if they were looking to improve one of these buildings in the real world today. This included connecting the walls to the roof and to hold the building together kind of like a belt, and also putting some braces against the walls to prevent them from collapsing in or out of the building. I then subjected this building to earthquakes on the shaking table. This enabled us to reproduce some of the damage that was actually observed in real buildings in California and study them in real time in a way that we can truly identify what the actual weaknesses is for our strengthening strategies. I'm confident that my research in shaking masonry buildings will help engineers save them for future generations.